You are now rocking with the best Illmatic podcast with your host, Louis L. Reed. Surviving beats, overcoming breaks. We got motion. Your go-to podcast unpacking hip-hop, trauma, and transformation.
Hey, what's up? This is your man, Louis L. Reed, for another episode of Illmatic Podcast. Check this out. Everybody who related ain't family, and everybody whose family you don't have to be related to. I am so excited. I'm ecstatic. I don't think that there's another word in the English dictionary that I can extrapolate my degree of joy and excitement about who my two guests are. First and foremost, let me point to immediately my left. We're joined by... What's your name, woman? What's your name, woman?
Dr. Topeka K.
Dr. Topeka K. Sam, my sister, who I love so very much. And this other guy, you probably may not have seen him recently, but you probably heard his quotes all over the place. Those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but often furthest from resources and power. Not anyone else other than...
Reverend Doctor. I'm kidding. She got titles. I wanted to. It's Glenn Martin, folks. It's Glenn Martin.
Glenn E. Martin. And you didn't even say Topeka K. Sam.
Liza, I said Dr. Topeka K. Sam.
Oh, you did say Doctor?
I did, yes.
Okay, all right. There was a lot of enunciation on the doctor. I didn't hear the K.
I was intimidated. That was a
yeah,
really
it
long
really was. It had me sweating a little bit. I'm like, I went to an unaccredited college, an alternative high school, so I didn't know how my education was going to fit in here. But in any event, we're here, we're live, man. So look, we're just going to jump right into it. Glenn, what's bringing you joy today?
What's bringing me joy today?
Not just today, but like at this space and age
in life?
Yeah, in life.
Freedom. I'm freer than I've ever been. I walked out of prison 24 years ago, but that doesn't match the type of liberty that I enjoy today. And that's liberty of thinking, liberty of voice, liberty of thoughts, liberty of travel. Like everything about my life feels so much freer than I've ever felt at any point.
We're going to get into that, kind of like how your journey to freedom actually has been. But Topeka, what's been bringing you joy?
You know, I paused because I was at this dinner, women over dinner, the other night. And the question was, like, what are you searching for? And I said, joy. And every single day, I'm, like, getting closer to that joy. And so for me, it's just being, doing whatever it is that I want to do, being whatever I want to be that day, you know, showing up in the way that I want to show up. Yeah. And I have actually been doing that. And that has been bringing me the most joy. Like, I have not smiled inside so much since who knows, but in these last few days, it has been like true joy. Yeah.
You're almost looking like Stella, like when she got her groove back. There's like a glow. When you walked in, I thought you floated in the room.
Well, that's the joy I'm talking about, you know, because when you start to really understand who you are and own it without apology, that is truly like the start of that joy, because now you're not trying to buy into or be led by other people's opinions or other people's ideas of who you should be. And that is the most liberating.
I just wish you could take that wisdom and bottle it up and give it to people at a much younger age.
I don't want to give it. I want to sell it.
I want to sell it. I appreciate that.
Try to give it, baby.
I feel you on that.
Glenn, when I was in prison, I did 14 years in federal prison. When I was in prison, there was a guy whose name was Director Samuel. He was the first African-American director for the Bureau of Prisons. Excuse me. He came to the institution where I was, and he did a clinic. At the time, I didn't know it was called a reentry clinic, but it was a returning home clinic. And within that clinic, he played a video of a guy who was at the then...
It don't even matter. We ain't doing free commercials today.
We can break to commercial, come right back. But of a guy who was at an organization, and this guy was talking, and not only was this guy like super captivating, not only was he very articulate, not only was he very charismatic, but he was someone that I saw a reflection of myself in, and that guy was you. And Director Samuel said that if this guy can do it, anyone can do it. And what was the it that Director Samuels was referring to in approximately 2008, 2009. Walk us through kind of like what your journey has been.
That's around the time when I realized, like, you know, when people tell you they look at you as a leader, most people don't even know what that means. Like, what do I do next? Like, people are looking at me to lead. And then I learned that leading is about collective leadership. Like, how do you invest in other people around you? If you do a good job of that, if you do a good job of helping other people to see their leadership and how they can shine, that just elevates your leadership. And I was starting to learn that at that moment. And I think that's what he might have been pointing to. Like, when he heard me speak publicly, when he shared space with me in meetings, I don't spend a whole lot of time feeding my own ego. Like, I feel like my legacy is behind me. It's not in front of me. I'm not chasing anything. And what he saw was someone who was trying to give him solid advice on how he could invest in the success of the people that he's responsible for supporting. And he took it and he ran with it. And he didn't have to. A lot of other people have heard me say the same thing. But I appreciate that he then planted a seed that grew into a tree that cast shade that he probably doesn't even enjoy today. But that's you and the things you've been able to accomplish.
Yeah. I'll often say that it's not necessarily about the me, but it's about the we. And Topeka, I've had the benefit of knowing you personally.
Define personally.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's subjective. So that's for a different episode. That's for the bonus episode. But for the purposes of right now, I know you personally.
Y'all want some space? Should I leave?
No. We've had all of our space.
Lovely man.
That would be us. That would be me. But in any event, I know you personally. We've had the benefit. I think all three of us, to some degree, we've had the benefit of really experiencing one another in a very private space. You are responsible for affecting a third of the United States women's prison population as it relates to changing the conditions of confinement through the bills that you've been able to pass, so on and so forth. Talk to us about what your journey was like as it relates to having been incarcerated, and what was the catalyst in order to get you involved in public advocacy.
So the catalyst, I would say, was my experience. Going through that experience, understanding that, everything that's written under the sun is for a purpose. And I knew that I had to take that experience and do something great with it. I wasn't sure what. And then when God spoke to me and told me what the what was, then I didn't know how. One thing I did know was that I had a voice, and I wasn't scared to use my voice for my experience. And so when I came out, that's all that I wanted to do, was just share what I lived and share what I saw.
And what was it that you lived, and what was it that you saw?
Well, I saw women being in prison that should not have been there, period. I didn't know that that was happening in the country. I visited men in prison, dated men who were in prison.
But you yourself didn't necessarily come from that space in life. You came from a very, very structured family.
Yes.
Your dad was super fly. Mom is super fly.
Yes.
You are a product.
I'm super fly. Right.
I mean, it depends on what day, how you wake up without a bonnet on your head, but that's different. But you come from a very structured family. You come from a very loving family, and your background wouldn't necessarily necessitate how you landed in federal prison. How does someone like you, who come from the space in life where you come from a two-parent household, in effect, have the societal pedigree that you have, how did you land in incarceration?
So I think there's a few things to that. One, there are many people like me in prison. I met them there. And with the data we're showing today, like 1 in 3, so that means everybody is impacted, right? And for me, my journey landed me there because I realized now in life that I was really trying to find an identity. And, growing up as a Black family in a white community, while you understand that you're different, you don't necessarily understand how different until you get embedded in your own community. And so when I got to college,
because there's nothing like our community that can make us realize how different we actually are.
And unfortunately, I want to be clear is that I understand how systemic racism plays a part in why we are the way we are to each other. When I think about, the person in the house versus the person in the field, and how, colorism and all those things play a major role as into why we see ourselves the way we do, and why there's so much internal hatred because of what society has done to us. So I want to kind of preference what I'm saying there. But as an 18-year-old go into an HBCU, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Right? I just thought I was going to a black college because this is where I wanted to go. And I wanted to be around other black people. And hey, I'm here. And they were like, oh, you talk like you're white. And you're pretty to be dark skinned. I'm like, I'm pretty, but why are you saying I'm pretty to be dark skinned?
Yeah, why is this qualifier? Yeah.
And I would call my parents because I did not understand. And as I began to kind of grow, and I started dating really for the first time, and I would date guys who were drug dealers. And, I'm thinking, oh, I can do this better. But it all perpetuated about me trying to find a sense of connectedness and a sense of identity. And I think I bought into the rhetoric of what being black was. And, when I talk to some of my friends now that I went to college where they were like, we just didn't understand why you were hanging out on Green Mountain 25th Street. Like, your parents would have killed you, if they knew where you were. And we wanted to be where you came from. But I so bad wanted to be accepted, you know? And so that's how I landed through that experience. It wasn't because I couldn't eat. It wasn't because I didn't have the emotional or mental intelligence to do the right thing, the moral compass, the understanding of God, all of those things. But it was the choices that led me to that because I wanted to be down. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be accepted. And I wanted to be loved by my people. And so the rejection, I think, or the way I internalized rejection, was what had me dive deeper, because then in that sense of, unrealistic acceptance, it was really power. And so that became my relationship to power and my relationship to money. And having money, you can have these things, you can buy things, people are automatically going to, because you have it, money will buy you out of any situation. And, that went on for, years until I got, incarcerated.
Pause there. Glenn, I see you nodding. You're talking about especially when Topeka was talking about the power and the money. What's coming up for you? And
just that she's pretty for being such a dark-skinned woman. That's all. I'm just kidding. Don't me too me. I'm kidding. Go ahead. Finish with your question, bro.
I actually like compliments. So tell me more about my
Please keep it coming. Glenn, when I think about someone like you, who is articulate and a credit
Sound
to
like
your
all
race.
my white friends right now.
You're so articulate and you're such a credit to your race. How does someone like you go from robbing jewelry stores to being incarcerated to literally being the poster child for criminal justice reform in this country?
So look, people ask me all the time, like, how do you turn your life around? I hate that narrative because people I met in prison are some of America's best and brightest. And the only turnaround that I can point to in my life to make people feel good about themselves with that narrative is just opportunity. Like, I essentially am not exceptional. I was exposed to a bunch of exceptional opportunities. And that just didn't happen until later in life. That just didn't happen until post-incarceration. Now, don't get me wrong. I feel like, they say the day you begin to live is the day you find your purpose for being alive. And that did happen when I was incarcerated, mostly because of not just my experience. In some ways, my first offer was 20 to 40. I did 6 joints. Like, it could have been worse.
Yeah.
What blew me away was the people I met on the inside and how they poured into me. Like, I was like anybody else. I thought prison was going to be like everything you ever saw on a Shawshank Redemption or some other movie. And then I go there and I'm like, damn. Like, wow, such talent wasting here behind these bars. And everything about it, like just the dark gray walls, the stone, the concrete, the cement, the metal, the bar, all of that together, that's what made prison difficult for me, actually. The human beings that were there just sort of wasting away when, if they weren't born into blank zip code or into blank skin color, you name it, their lives could have been totally different. They could be huge contributors. And so the journey that you just described, honestly, for me, is actually an easy journey. It's the same set of skills. Same thing it took for me to, just a few feet from literally where we're sitting here in this studio, be able to stick up jewelry stores in the middle of the day with tens of thousands of New Yorkers walking by and make sure no one gets hurt and walk away with $500,000 to $1 million. Same skill sets I use today to own 90 houses and rent them to formerly incarcerated people and their families.
Yeah. And you had a catchphrase back when you were robbing jewelry stores.
I'm sorry I haven't told you that because I'm sure you're about to say it.
Right now it's a robbery. Let's not turn this into a homicide. I almost feel like you were like the king of catchphrases.
Not that much different than being a fundraiser and nonprofit. Is the right answer. I mean, again, same skill set. I appreciate you actually saying that.
Yeah.
Same skill set. I mean, the idea was how do you get someone afraid enough to give you what you want them to give you without actually having to use the weapon, right? That was the goal, not to physically hurt anyone, not that people didn't get hurt. On the same token, like I don't take a piss without a strategy. And even today, as I run 2 businesses, as I employ formerly incarcerated people, as I try to house formerly incarcerated people, every move I make has to be strategic. Same skill set, bro. Same skills. Like 19-year-old young black kid running around Midtown sticking up jewelry stores. Not that different than 53-year-old doing 14 Zoom calls a day with all these stakeholders trying to close on real estate deals.
Topeka, when I think about you and I think about people who are in the field, you have a presence about you. I think that you've always had a presence about you, but you have a presence about you that sometimes generates criticism and it also generates compliments. And off camera, we were talking about how you're just like fully walking more into your own personhood and your own power. How does that, what does that look like for you now? And how did you come to that moment of crystallization?
Well, the moment of crystallization came when, and I shared it with you all before, that, you know, the same people that didn't fool with me then are the same people that didn't fool with me now. You know, the same people I was trying to be accepted by were the same people I was trying to be accepted by again. And when I saw the same harm that was being perpetuated against me, because that is a real thing, that I decided I didn't want to accept it, you know? And so I decided that I wasn't going to dim my light to make someone else feel comfortable. I decided I wasn't just going to accept people to treat me and talk to me or talk about me any type of way because I wanted to afford them grace. You know, yes, God has changed me a lot, but God is still working on me each and every day. And to afford people grace is one thing, but to allow people to continue to take advantage or to harm you is another. And so I had to come to the place where also being at a place where I knew that I was amended, like I was redeemed, and that I have whatever experience or road that I had to travel, it was for a purpose. And in that traveling and in that road, that I have done what I needed to do to make amends for that. And God has shown me that in many, many ways. And because of that, I didn't have to continue to suffer because of, you know, what is it? Survivor's remorse. Or you're told that you should not feel good about making money. Or you're looked down to, but then the people who look down to are not the people that you're aspiring to be like, the people you're aspiring to be around, the people that can teach you anything, the people that want to help you to get to that next level of who you are. And I decided I did not want to be uncomfortable for other people anymore. I wanted to be comfortable in who I am and move in my light and take that power that I've always had. Because we have it. And you are exceptional, period. There are other exceptional people, but you're exceptional.
Thank you.
And so, you know, we don't take that away from us. And I think we so often are being chastised for us being exceptional. And own it. And so for me, it was like, I'm no longer doing that. I'm no longer shortchanging myself, because everything that I've done with the grace of God, I have earned. And so therefore, I don't need to downplay that. Like, why? It's not, you know, they call it Godfidence, you know, it's the confidence of God that abides in me. And when I understood that if you are a believer and you understand that God abides in you and God is the omnipotent, the omni-everything, then that means so am I. And because I understand that, then why would I want to walk less than that at all? And so, you know, I've been moving in that, and I get excited because each day I make new decisions that are good for me. And because if it's good for me, then it becomes better for everyone else around me.
Glenn, you were one of the first people who, without saying it, demonstrated that you gave me permission basically to not be exploited by my experiences. You gave us permission, I think, in the field to say that you can show up, you can share your story, and you don't have to necessarily walk out just with an applause. You can actually have an honorarium, right? Was there a moment for you that spoke to that notion as to where like you weren't going to be foundationally pimped, so to speak? What was that like for you?
So a couple of things. There were many moments. First of all, if I show up as wise on those things, it's because I'm just a few years ahead of the rest of y'all. Like, I've just been doing this for a hot minute. And so I have experienced some of the things that y'all are still experiencing today, except it was just a few years ago. So I draw from those experiences. And then I'm very transparent. Like, I just increasingly, the longer I live, the more I realize that the more secrets you have, the more people can harm you. Mm-hmm. So it's better to just put it, write your own story, as they say. Otherwise, someone else is going to try to write it. I had a lot of moments where I was sitting with colleagues. This space is a heavily sort of progressive, left-leaning space, right? It is what it is. Like, there's some conservative folks doing this work, but I'd say 90% of folks in this space have been here for a really long time and come from the progressive left. And I thought we were all just sort of in this together, like suffering together. Like I just thought we were all struggling.
Child. Silly us.
And I know. And then I'd be sitting in these nonprofits and I'd hear Mary say to Susan, like, do you want to borrow my lake house? Or, hey, I'm traveling to Aspen this weekend. And I just was like, I thought we were all like, my first job, I owed $83,000 in fine, fees, restitution, and my first salary was $16,000 a year in nonprofit in New York City. Yeah, but we wasn't all struggling together. Yeah. We was not all struggling together. Yeah. And I got to the point where I realized that, you get to this point in life where you realize that, like, you're struggling with what feels like your gut trying to tell you something, and at some point you got to just listen. Mm-hmm. And so I listen to my gut more than anything else. Like, in fact, I find when I turn away from my instinct is when I get it wrong. Mm-hmm. And so my instinct told me that I needed to lean in and not have this whole complex about being poor and having that as a badge of honor. And then even going further, and now being the one that can say to my colleagues, hey, you want to borrow my home in Savannah? Hey, you want to borrow one of my homes on Tybee Island? Hey, you need some time away? Same thing I heard like a lot of these white folks saying to each other for many, many years in this nonprofit space. Yeah. I want to touch on something Topeka said. You'll never be criticized by people who are doing more than you. That's something else I've learned in this journey. Mm-hmm. And so people are always going to talk. Like, if people are shooting for you, it's because you're hovering just above the target. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you shouldn't be surprised that people are shooting for you when you're doing your thing. But at the same time, I think that, as Topeka just said, you really just have to own your greatness. And, when I think of Topeka, like, she has... So people who would be intimidated by Topeka, that's about them. That's not about Topeka. It's not about anybody else. Because that's not even the way I see Topeka. Like, I actually see Topeka as having a tremendous amount of humility. And I'll say, I don't think my mother has ever seen me cry. Topeka has seen me cry. Yeah. And that is for a reason. Yeah. That is because of her presence and who she is in this world and what she has emerged to mean for leaders like me. Like, I can lead all over the world, but even leaders, like they say leadership is a lonely place. Yeah. People like Topeka and you make it so that it hasn't been that lonely. And I'm glad she's here owning her greatness, whether it's today, last week, whenever you figured it out. I'm glad you figured it out.
Talking about tears, I have had some hard moments in my life. And I think that either both of you or either one of you have walked me through the hardest moments in my life. When I go back to earlier in my professional career, when I had to leave the city of Bridgeport under fire, because in part I was arrested for child support arrears at a recruit while I was incarcerated, I reached out to Glenn. I was suicidal, I reached out to Glenn. And one of the things that Glenn told me, Topeka, was that you concerned about a one-horse town and the horse died.
For real.
The world is a much larger place than Bridgeport, Connecticut.
That'll snap you out of it, boy.
I wish it was only Bridgeport that was mad at me. I'd be like, for real?
He's like, wait, how many readers this is?
Get right back, Bridgeport. Y'all good.
But it's very true, y'all. But when I think about that hard moment that I had in my life, it was actually, people don't know this. This is the first time I'm speaking about this publicly. It was actually Glenn who facilitated the introduction to me and Jessica and me with Van during the time that they needed someone to nationally organize around the First Step Act. Glenn told me prior to that, he said, bro, your network is going to be your net worth. That's going to be invaluable to you. And so not only, I've had private moments I've had private moments of, just poor decisions that I've made. But I remember when I lost my dad. And incidentally, tomorrow is the 2-year anniversary of having lost my dad. When I lost my dad, I remember Glenn called me like 1:00 in the morning. And he was like, bro, if you need or when you need someone, I'm getting a little emotional right now, man. He's just saying like how if you need somebody and when you need somebody, you call my phone. I don't care what I'm doing. I don't care who I'm with. You call me. And when I think about Topeka, like what family is, right? Like we've been family to each other in terms of those tears. And it's hard for a man to express emotion, especially in the sight of another man, right? And that was meaningful to me, man. And I appreciate that. Even when you lost your dad, I remember like being so heartbroken for you because I know I know that your dad was a black man, is a black man, right? Mm-hmm. That is your hero. Mm-hmm. And you didn't necessarily have to look outside of the house. Mm-hmm. for that validation. You didn't have to look outside of the house for that affirmation. And so I wanted to ask you, Topeka, what has been the hardest moment for you, in your life, in recent memory?
Okay, well, first I want to touch on what you said about poor choices. There are no such thing as poor choices. I'm a firm believer that every choice that you make is a choice to get you where you are today.
Amen.
So, and I literally just got off of teaching a class with Nicole about that very thought, that, when is enough?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that you never made a poor choice.
Yeah.
You made a necessary choice to get where you are today.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so that's number one.
Yeah. Topeka's big sis in me right now.
On camera.
On camera.
Him right now. Him.
That's her way of like stop acting like
I chill. To the point of what was the most difficult, decision and points that I had to make in my life. I may say the most necessary decision that I've had to make in my life is one that I'm making now. And that is to pivot. And the pivot is, for me, how do you do good and do well? We've been all talking about this, around this space and around, the idea of, capitalism or conscious capitalism or, all the language that people just like to say. But at the end of the day, I came home from prison and I hit the ground and I've done a whole bunch of good.
Talk about it.
And I want to do well.
That's right. Talk
and
about it.
I am happy that I've been able to afford the opportunities for myself and my family because of the over hard work that I have done.
Yeah.
And I know that I can do things better differently. And the more money and resources that I have, the more good I can do. And that right now has been it has been difficult in that for me. And I know that God has been telling me for a while now, pivot. Because people didn't try to take me down several times, but I keep going. I'm like, you're not taking me down, so I take me down. That's it,
Yeah.
But now I'm kind of like, there's a way to do good and do well. And to legacy, to the point of it being behind you. I'm also a Highland project leader. And it was the first time in my life they invest in black women and, give us resources, $100,000, in order for us to dream about what our legacy is and how to build it. But the core of it is generational wealth. And it allowed me for the first time in that inaugural cohort to think about what is my generational wealth. That my legacy is not a bunch of people, for me, well, while great, a bunch of sisters and people can say the impact that I've made on the space of social justice and incarceration. You know, I've received the pardon and I've gotten all the awards and all the things. But when it comes down to it, those 8 nieces and nephews, godchildren, my mother, they can't take none of that shit with them if I leave. What I have is a few investments, you know, a good life insurance policy, and that's it. But I know I desire and require more to be able to give to my family. And what's not going to happen, it's not going to happen doing it in the way that I have been doing it or the way that many of us have done it. And so when you think about the intellectual property you have and the things that it takes in order to build a business, and that's what we all have done. We've built businesses, successful businesses, but we have not been able to monetize on those businesses in the way because people have impose their belief system about what doing well looks like for us.
That's right.
And so for me now, you know, I'm at that point. And it has been difficult because of just, I don't want to leave people behind. You know, the thing that I've struggled with my entire life. But I also understand that it's because of how I have historically viewed wealth. Proximity to it, understanding it, and
who possesses it.
And who possesses it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and really wealth is one, you know, wealth we look at as different things. You have a wealth of love and family and friends and, you know, all that. But also I'm talking about money, you know, green, cash, you know.
I just want to add a word to all this, which is shame. Like the nonprofit space is a space that manipulates people using shame, toxic shame. And the fact that Topeka even feels like she needs to go on for more than 10 seconds about her wanting to put some money in her pocket is all about that damn toxic shame. The truth is nonprofit salaries are disrespectful to my grandkids. That's the way I think of it. I put 17 years in. That's 17 years I could have been using my intellectual property and my skills and monetizing it to make sure my kids, my great-grandkids, and so on, don't end up having to go through what I went through. Everyone looks at me and points at me and says what you said earlier, like, oh, poster child, look at him, he made it. I don't want that for nobody else. It's been a difficult-ass journey. This shit will kill you. This shit will get up in your DNA and kill you. And so I love the fact that the three of us are, like, putting the shame in the rearview mirror and moving forward. And, you know, whether we like it or not, people are looking toward us and they're going to follow us. But I think it's the right direction to go. I started talking about this a few years ago, and here's what I learned. I went to some of the very same. I mean, this morning I wrote a check for $210,000 to close a real estate deal.
It didn't go to my account, Glenn. I didn't get
That's
it.
hilarious. You gave me the wrong route and everything. I mean, you know how long it would have took me to earn that kind of money in nonprofit? I told you I started out making $16,000 a year, but the point is, like, I went to a bunch of people who used to give me money to do quote unquote social justice work. Now, the way the system is set up, literally the people you have to go to beg money from are the very people that have benefited from the systems that you say you're trying to collapse.
Yes.
And so how far are they really going to let you go with their resources to redesign that system? Because what I did was I went to them and said, you know what, I have a plan for taking formerly incarcerated leaders and investing in them so they build wealth and do this work from their own perspective. Nobody gave me a penny. I've raised about $200 million in the last 24 years. Nobody gave me a penny for that idea. That's the space we work in.
That's real.
I had a conversation with Emery Jones, who is the CEO over at Paper Planes, and he said someone reminded him that he had been home X amount of years, and he said, "I'm glad you remember because I don't." And in effect, what he was saying in essence is that he wants to be so accomplished, so far removed from where he used to go, where he used to be in life.
That's a footnote.
Yeah, and that he's not even counting how long he's been home. He's like, he said, I'm glad you remember because I don't. And he wasn't being arrogant.
I would say Frederick Douglass didn't die an ex-slave. He died all these other things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's another thing. We are in a space, a sector where it convinces people that small slither of their identity is their entire identity.
That's right.
And that's shameful.
Glenn, when I launched my film company at the top of the year, my documentary film company, Decoded Story Labs, the first thing that my DMs lit up with were people saying, "Oh, are you going to do this criminal justice reform documentary? Are you going to cover this?" I said, "The 13th has already been covered,
Right.
right? The new Jim Crow has already been written.
Right.
I didn't want to come out of the gate as the stereotype, as the guy who did this work in this space, who's doing an extension of that thing in this newer space. I didn't want to do that, and so I think that if there's anything that I've learned thus far is that pivot, right? If I'm going to pivot, I'm going to make a hard pivot, and I'm going to, in effect, put that stuff in my rearview mirror so that I can move on and grow on.
20-something years ago when I started doing this work, formerly incarcerated people getting a job in the nonprofit sector was a win. It's no longer a win. It's embarrassing. It's shameful. It's one of the smallest things people can accomplish. People can break into so many other sectors and be hugely successful. And so you doing it, Topeka doing it. Like when I see Topeka, I watch social media, I'm like, look at this woman here. Like this woman is in spaces where like literally when I started, first of all, there was no movement when I started this work. And the idea of a formerly incarcerated person being on a stage at Essence Fest and all these other places was unheard of. And when I watch both of you just shatter ceilings every week, every month, every year, I know that there's people looking toward you and being like, maybe I could do that.
Glenn, I want to ask you, and there was a few people who, when I told them that you were going to be on, they wanted me to ask you, what was it feeling like when you went to the White House and you got rejected?
They wanted you to axe me, A-X-E?
Yeah, I'm black.
That's what
how
most
I say
people
it.
want from Vegas. Like, I'm not surprised people
really
wanted you to axe me.
He wanted to ask.
What was that feeling like? What was that feeling like when you got rejected from not being able to go into the White House?
So this was like 20...
And give context.
This was like 2014. Get invited to the White House by the newly elected black president. And, that felt like the pinnacle of a person's career, right? Like I had never been to the White House before, definitely never have anything to do with a president. And get all excited, put on my best suit, take that Amtrak down the Northeast Corridor, get to the White House with a bunch of colleagues. They all walking in, going through the whole give your ID. They get these beautiful green passes, blah, blah, blah. So I get up to the window. I give him my ID. This motherfucker hands me a bright pink magenta ID that says needs escort. And everybody's looking at me like now I'm standing out from everybody, except my colleagues are just like, oh, he must be delayed. They all go in. And then Secret Service stops me and they're like, oh, yeah, because of your criminal record, you need an escort. So I'm like, who should escort me? They was like, well, whoever invited you. I'm like, oh, so like Valerie Jarrett should just run downstairs and just come grab me. So it's an hour-long meeting. I'm 30 minutes into it. I'm sitting there looking at this Secret Service dude scowling at me. And this door opens up, and this young white intern, must be 22 years old, kicks the door open. She's like, mister. And I'm like, yes, please take me upstairs. She's like, I'm so sorry. She grabs me. We walk to the elevator 100 feet away. She looks at me. She's like, Mr. Richardson, I am so sorry. I was like, Mr. Richardson, my name is Martin. She was like, oh, my God. I was like, do not take me back.
Yeah.
Take me up to that meeting upstairs. And she must have felt the pressure, took me up to the meeting. And those are like the hard moments in my career that I'm actually proud of, because I walked into that room and I could have put my head down and been embarrassed and been ashamed and just try to become part of that meeting. No. When they allowed me to raise my hand and it was my moment to speak, I said, look, I know this is going to disrupt this whole agenda, but let me tell you, that experience I just had downstairs in the White House with a black president who says he cares about criminal justice reform, like that is the scarlet letter that millions of Americans are carrying around. And then when I walked out of it, because, there's a bunch of apologies. We're so sorry, we're so sorry, we're so sorry. Then I get on the train, I'm going home, and I was like, let me write a letter to the president. And then I was like, let me do something more. Let me write a letter to the president and send it to the Wall Street Journal. And that could have been a career killer. Because back then, everybody was loving Obama.
Yeah.
It might be a different story today.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how many of my colleagues, this is the part that blew me away, called me up privately and was like, you shouldn't have done that. I will that has been the story of my career. Like doing things that my gut tell me is the right thing to do, even when my knees are shaking, and then having the people who call themselves allies call me up and say, just like when I said we should close Rikers, can't tell you how many people you would think would be on that bandwagon that pulled me aside and was like, that's going to be a career killer for you. You shouldn't have said that out loud.
Wow. Topeka, when you were tethered to the Trump administration at the time. Notice I said you. I'm kidding. But what was it like? What was it like for you? I remember the we really got our behind spanked we had people who, you know, in effect, not even were in our DMs, they were like texting us and like blatantly just saying like, y'all Samboing for the man. What was that like for you? How did you feel when we were tethered to that administration trying to get people free? Like, what was that like for you?
You know, for me, it brought up the same things that I had experienced, you know, kind of moving into my community and getting to the black college, because I was like, these are the same people. They look like the fathers of the people I grew up with. You know what I mean? Like, so this is not new to me. Going into this White House is not new to me. Understanding how to communicate with these people is not new to me. And why should I be ashamed of that? Like, really, you know? That was the first thing. The second thing was, when I talked to sisters and brothers who were in federal prison, they said, you have to go. You have to do this. We can't wait another 4 years. We don't want to be in prison. We don't do what you need to do. First of all, if you're not there, then who's going to be there to represent us? You know? And so when I did that, it was, you're right. Like, why am I, again, listening to Alice? I had people left my board because they were just like, oh, no, you're going into the Trump administration. You're working with those people, and, you know? But I'm like, well, the millions of
and
people
these are the
that are
so-called
incarcerated.
woke left, you know, the people.
Yeah, woke is a joke.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
keep talking.
yeah.
You know? Right. And, you know, brothers or men, I'll say, I won't even call them, you know, males, would be saying things publicly on social media, being disrespectful and, you know, calling me outside of my name. And, you know, it was just, what it did was it exposed, you know, like, tell me how you really feel.
Yeah.
Right, number one. It gave people permission. The same shit that people argue about, about Trump, right? He gives a certain sector of people permission to act boldly with who they are. It was the same shit on this side. It gave people the permission to act boldly about who they were and what they believed. And so when I started to experience that and knew that, you know what, at the end of the day, miss me.
Yeah.
Like, this is not even about you. You free, my nigga. Like,
Yeah.
you free.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why am
You're
I
all the
even
way free.
That's
like,
a lot
why
of
am I even
privilege.
listening to
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
about not going in to free people when you free?
Yeah.
How dare you offer a person who never been in a prison,
Yeah.
but you're a great ally, and you telling me don't work with somebody, you don't want to give this person a win? It's not a win for him. It's a win for them.
Yeah.
It's a win
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was just like, nah, I'm not, you know, and the first time I was invited in during that administration, I didn't go
I
because
remember.
of all of that.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, yeah.
And then Jessica and Van called me again.
Yeah.
And I had said, well, you know, God, if this came around again, then, and that's when I said, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And it
And
started a
talk
movement.
and you. I want you to bring our listeners and our viewers into the moment when you were in the White House and you asked a very poignant question. What was the question that you asked?
Which one?
About asking people.
You.
She's like, all my questions are poignant.
You teed that up well, but you should have gave my heads up.
The question about how many people in this room are formerly incarcerated?
Right. So yes. So I asked that question: how many people are formerly incarcerated?
Contextualize it for the
Right. So okay. So we were in there. We were in a round table. First, when I was asked to go, I said the only way I was going to be able to, I would go, was if I was able to bring other formerly incarcerated women with me.
Say that one more time for the people in the back, because you didn't just go for yourself. No, seriously, that needs to be underscored. You
Yes.
said that if I'm going to go, I'm bringing other people along with me.
Yes.
Just for the haters out there who's always thinking about how she shows up in the world, etc. But go ahead, please.
Yeah. So it was about 15 of us that went. And, you know, shout outs to Jessica and Van, who, you know, sponsored us to get there. And we came in and we had round tables, breakout rooms with different elected officials. And then we went into, like, you know, a major room, and there was supposed to be a talk that we were supposed to listen. And Van pulled me aside and was like, you know, you're going to get on stage with us. So I'm like, you know, you stay ready with you, stay ready. You ain't got to get ready.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
cool, I'm good. So I get on the stage, and, you know, I'm still talking. Van texted me the other day. It was like he remembers just for the standing ovation that I got in the White House, but it was talking about my experience. And we were talking about pads and tampons, and I had everybody wear a pin that said "Free Alice Johnson." And
Just small programming note. Seriously, small programming note. oftentimes people look to Kim Kardashian, who has been a great ally along with us, especially when we passed the First Step Act, in terms of her advocacy for Miss Alice Marie Johnson. But in all actuality, it was Topeka K. Sam who literally got the nation in order to basically elevated Miss Alice Marie Johnson's name into the ethos of the social criminal justice reform movement.
On real shit, when Obama left was no longer in office because of his term, termed out, and Trump came in, nobody wanted to work with that administration, which also meant anybody who was advocating for people to get out of prison through the federal level stopped doing the work.
Yep.
That's the real fucking truth, right? And so because of that,
people don't know that part of the story.
No, they didn't. And so what happened was there was only a few of us still advocating and raising the voices and names of people and opening up opportunities.
Let me also add this as well. When Glenn called me to apply for the job with Cut 50, I didn't do it at first. Glenn had to call me back like a month later, like, bro, why didn't you submit your resume? And I'm like, I don't want to be connected with Van. I don't want to be connected with this Trump administration. I had a high degree of suspicion about what was going on because I'm thinking like this is going to be career suicide. So talking about that courage, et cetera. But please.
But then it's also like, we talk about we deserve a seat at the table.
Yeah.
So it's not all tables? Like, what are we doing, Or we're going to create our own table. Sometimes you're tired of creating your own table.
Yeah.
Sometimes, in order to get things done, you have to go to the table.
Yeah.
That's right.
And to be able to be afforded the opportunity, because we got to call it for what it is.
Yeah.
Everyone doesn't get invited into every single room.
That's right.
And we also have to know who to send in. Because at times, sending the wrong person in will also kill certain things.
That's right.
And it does take courage, and it takes, resilience and all the things in order to step out of there, understanding that you're going to get a dart in your back, and on your neck, a foot on your neck.
Yeah, and sometimes a spit in your face.
Yeah.
I want to. I don't know why you brought up this subject, but fuck it, I'm gonna go in because I remember. I get to name this shit. It was the ACLU. It was Open Society Foundation. It was all these national, federal criminal justice reform organizations that was not only not advancing anything to help get people out of prison during that time because they drew this ideological line in the sand, but let's name it. They were literally trying to sabotage the work that we were doing.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah.
I saw the emails.
That's correct.
And these are organizations that Black and brown folks rely heavily on to preserve their freedom, protect their freedom, give them more liberty. And they were just ready to sit it out for 4 years.
Yep.
Not during the Trump, we're not going to work with him.
Yeah.
And you know what? Philanthropy and the nonprofit sort of progressive space actually rewards that kind of behavior.
And they can also conspire with the aforementioned, without
I'll
question.
never forget, man. That's what motivated me.
What we did was on a shoestring budget. I mean, you know how we almost missed payroll. We had to get it however we got it, but we got it done. But I wanted to go back to the context about being in the room. When you go on stage, Van brings you on stage, you give your story, and then you ask a pointed question. What's that question that you asked?
How many people are formerly incarcerated? And everyone who was formerly incarcerated in the room stood. And people, you can see how they just started looking around. One didn't understand that they were even sitting next to someone who was formerly incarcerated. And kind of like the shock, but yet, wow, they've been to prison, or, this idea of, as you said earlier, the who goes to prison. And I believe that moment was a moment that started shifting things and opening up more opportunities within the space, not only for us to be in specific rooms, to be coined as subject matter experts, to be paid in that way, and also continue to do the work, give each other the permission, who was doing the work at the time, to continue to go in those rooms and go, to the lands that other men would not go to.
Yeah.
I want your listeners to hear, though, we're not just formerly incarcerated folks. We bring a ton of other skill sets to the table, because I do think there's been a bit of a bastardization of this concept of formerly incarcerated people needing to be in the room, because what you get now is you got people setting up entire speakers bureaus where they're like, you give us a few thousand, we'll write a check to this formerly incarcerated person for $800.
Yeah.
He'll show up to your meeting. And what's happening is you got people moving forward poisonous policy and saying, oh, no,
That's
we
true.
had a formerly incarcerated person in the room.
That's
we checked
right.
the
He was
box.
they
And
checked
I
the
think
box.
that's the other thing, right? The point is, because you've been to prison does not automatically make you an expert on certain topics and issues.
Say that one more time.
Say it 10 more times.
Yeah.
Because you've been to prison, it does not make you an expert on all topics. It just doesn't. And a lot of times you don't have the emotional intelligence
That's right.
to even be in the space. So you do more harm than you do good.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to understand when to hold and when to fold.
Yeah,
Facts.
yeah. So we got just a few more minutes left. I just wanted to pivot and have a lighter discussion.
Now?
Yeah.
30 seconds.
I know, right?
Glenn, what's in your playlist right now?
You mean that literally?
Yes, I mean literally. Like, what's on your playlist? What are you listening to?
Right now I'm listening to the drum beat of my heart, bro.
That was so poetic.
Let me tell you, when I say that I have tuned out the rest of the world and I'm very focused on Glenn, I am not lying. I appreciate the question, but I want people to hear that answer. Like, I am extremely focused on what Glenn needs to be successful right now. And that is part of what's moving me. And my shoulders are so light, bro. Like, I just got called by the IRS the other day and found out I was going to be audited. I called my lawyer, my accountant. I was like, go handle that. I'm good, and I went back to work.
Yeah, roll right over.
For real. That's my answer to your question.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Topeka.
I mean, I can't beat that.
You can't. I'm about to delete every song. I'm about to delete my entire playlist. I would just throw my phone away. On the way.
Don't worry. I mean, I can say on Pandora Radio, I was listening to Loose Ends Radio. So
I love Loose Ends.
Yes.
My mom used to listen to Loose Ends. I love Loose Ends.
I was getting a little, We Are One by
Yeah.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
yeah,
just spinning a little, Sister Sledge, a little old school. I go back.
Yeah.
I appreciate the music today.
Yeah.
But I just don't see myself at almost 50 with the,
Yeah, with the
stuff.
Yeah.
But it's cool every day to get our rock. But yeah, I take it back.
Got it. Glenn, what's on your reading list right now? Or what have you read recently? Whether it's a book, whether it's an article, like what have you read recently that's really, kept you buoyant?
I'm trying to read books by people I know up close to try to compare who I know as a human being versus what they've written. I'm not going to name anyone specific, but I just find that even people I really admire, when they put pen to paper to make it work for the publishing industry, it's not the person I really fully know. Like, I'm actually pretty blown away. And it just reinforces for me that the radar that I've put up around this criminal justice reform stuff, I need to keep it up no matter where I'm going. Because it looks like this whole world forces black and brown folks to show up differently to be able to pass the litmus test. And so I'm reading a couple of books right now, but I'm reading them with this introspective mind around who do I really want to be in the world.
What about you?
Well, outside of the Bible that I read every day, and this is a complete different side of some of the things that I've been reading, but I've been on this platform called the Eros platform.
Eros?
EROS, and it talks about sexuality and about like honing into your sexual power, as in, the greatness of that in your core and what that looks like as a woman, like the divine feminine. Because again, when we think about our power as women, and it's black women. I believe black women's power can change the world.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, black women are forced to show up a particular way because we are, and that does not always embrace feminine energy. It does more masculine than the feminine, and you can have a balance of both. But I feel like we should have not only give ourselves the permission to settle into our feminine energy and power, but we also need to begin to build more upon that, because the more I think that we show up, it also helps to strengthen men around us. And so I've been really kind of reading and studying, working more, on some of that.
I love that for you. I've been actually doing a master class.
I love that for me too.
Yeah, I love that. I've been doing a master class with Noam Chomsky, and I've just been like really thinking disruptively and looking at the world from a different lens. So I really do. I can almost connect. I said almost connect with.
Almost.
Yeah, I can almost connect with where you are. Look,
wait, hold on. Let me add to my reading list a little bit. No. Let me say this. You made me think about this. You know what else I've been reading? I've been going back and reading love letters from ex-girlfriends. And you know
When you
why?
was incarcerated?
No.
Love
Period.
letters
Just in
after?
life. Yeah, I got
Really?
handwritten love letters from people, and you know why? Because they were begging me to be a better person at the time, and I couldn't hear it. And I'm a different person now, and I'd like to think that I'm showing up in the world a lot better, or at least like very open to like identifying the places where I'm not showing up as my best self.
In
and trying to do something
relationships?
in relationships.
I mean, because
But
our relationship to people and business is different, right?
Yeah.
It was in relationships, but they were trying to get me as a human being in a relationship to show up as the person that other people were looking to and admiring. Like they wanted those two things to be closer together. And I couldn't hear it before because there was all this chatter. When you're on a mountain, you're surrounded and it's hard to tell who's who. And this, you know, I've been through the valley.
Yeah.
And I've come to learn that those quiet moments in the valley are the ones that allow you to really stop and say, who am I as a human being? So that's what I've been reading lately. I've been reading these letters and suddenly they show up. I got to pick up the phone and call people and be like, thank you. Like, thank you. I didn't realize the message that you were trying to share with me back then because there was no reason for me to slow down and listen.
Yeah.
And now I got all this space and like money, you know, wealth is about freedom.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot more freedom now and a lot more of my time back to figure out where I want to invest it. And I've been investing it in these letters. And I feel like I'm growing so much from these letters that were written 8, 9, 10 years ago sometimes.
How are the thank yous being received?
I mean, some people are like, wow, I'm glad you finally read that letter the way I wanted you to. And other people like, Glenn, who?
Yeah. And then there's a third category where he can't even get through because he's blocked.
Whatever, you know. I let the ego get his ass kicked every once in a while.
Topeka, parting words. Take us out.
No, Glenn did.
All right. Well, that's it. Yo, we appreciate you being on with us. This is your man, Louis L. Reed, on Illmatic Podcast, Overcoming Beats, Surviving Breaks, here with my brother, Glenn E. Martin, and my sister, Topeka K. Sam.
Doctor.
Ooh. Doctor.
I'm a fast learner.
Yeah, he is. I told you I went to unaccredited college. Dr. Topeka K. Sam. Until next time, we out of here. Peace. Clear?
Cool.
That was fun.
That was great.
Now we got to get a picture for the thumbnail.
All right.
For the thumbnail.
What does that mean? Stay in our seats?
Until next time, like, subscribe, share. Illmatic Podcast. Overcoming Beats, Surviving Breaks. See you next time.